This is going to be a 20-inch slip stitch pattern. It'll be for a little girl because it's going to be in pink, and this one is actually, when I get it finished, it's actually spoken for. So it won't be going onto my shop. But I am using Mariner's double knit, Essentials double knit. This was a cheaper one when Mariner's was, before they closed down. There's some very good, I think it was about £1 a ball at the time, you know, it was very good wool and that, and good prices, but they're no longer with us. So anyway, that's why I'm using the pink, and I will be using the white, just a little bit of white I had left over from something else, to put in the slip stitch pattern. And I'll be using three and a quarter for the ribs and 4mm for the body part. And with the pink, I'm going to cast on 61 stitches, and I'm going to leave a long end for the stitch up the side of the cardigan. That's what I always do when I do the cable cast on. And the cable cast on is, you don't go into the stitch, you go behind the stitch like that. And I'm going to cast on 61 like that into the back of the stitch like that. So remember, not into the stitch like that, into behind the whole stitch like that. And I'm going to cast 61 stitches on like that way. 57, 58, 59, 60, that's 61 stitches. So that I now have 61 stitches, and I'm going to knit 10 rows in twisted rib. You can knit whatever kind of rib you prefer, but I prefer the twisted rib, and the twisted rib is just knitting into the back of the knit stitch on every row, every knit stitch on every row. So that is knitting into the back like that. That's knit one, purl one, knit one into the back of the stitch, and carry on across the row like that, just knitting into the back of every knit stitch. And then when you do the next row, just knit into the back of the knit stitches on that row, not the purl stitch, just the knit stitch. So you're going to knit into the back of every stitch. If you want to do twisted rib, if you don't, just knit into the front of the knit stitch as you would normally do, but I like the twisted rib. So I'm going to do 10 rows twisted rib like that, and I will be back when I get that far. That is 10 rows twisted rib, and I'm now going to change to 4mm needles, and I'm going to knit 2 rows in just plain stocking stitch, which is 1 row knit and 1 row purl. So it's just, as you can see, just knitting this row, and I'm at the end of that knit row, and I'm onto the last stitch. I'm going to knit into the last knit stitch, the back of it, and the next row is just purl all the way across. And I'm sure everyone knows how to knit and purl, but you've been doing that for the rib anyway, so, and that's just knit to the end, purl to the end of that row. So that is the purl row knitted, and now we're going to do the row where we're going to add in the white for the slip stitch. So we're now going to add in the white for the pattern, and as we started off with 61 stitches for the rib, but we only need 60 stitches for the pattern because you want to start with 2 stitches in white and finish with 2 stitches in white. So when you knit your first stitches in white, knit the first 2 stitches together in white. That gets rid of that extra stitch, and then just knit your next one in white. So you have 2 stitches at the start, and then you're slipping the next stitch, and then you're going to knit the next stitch in white, but keep your finger on that last stitch that you knitted in white to stop it from tightening up behind the stitch. And there you have one, and now you have a little bit bar over the knit stitch, so it doesn't tighten it up and doesn't gather it in. So you're going to knit 4 in white, that's 2, 3, 4. You're going to slip the next stitch, knit your next 4 stitch, but hold on to that last white stitch that you knitted again. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip your next stitch, knit your next 4. Keep your finger on that last one you knitted before the slip stitch. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip that pink stitch and knit the next stitch, and holding on to that stitch before the slip stitch. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and just carry on across the row like that, keeping that loop loose behind the pink so it doesn't, if you keep tightening it up as you go across, it'll pull your knitting in like that and it'll gather the stitches, so you don't want that. Now I'll meet you at the end of that row. So we are now onto the purl row, and we're going to purl the first 2 in white, or contrast, you can just call it whatever you want, yeah, whatever colour you're using, or your contrast. And then when you slip the stitch that you slipped on the knit row, you slip it from behind, otherwise you have a twisted stitch on the other side when you come to knit that row again. And like you did on the knit row, keep your finger on that last stitch that you knitted before the slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip that slip stitch from behind. Keep your finger on the last stitch you knitted before the slip stitch that you purled, actually, not knitted. That's 4. Slip from behind. Knit your next 4, holding on to that last stitch before the slip stitch. You carry on across that row now and meet you at the end of that row. So that is the 2 rows of the slip stitch, and now we're going to knit just 2 rows in pink, but you don't need to cut the white off. You just twist the white around the pink. like that, and just pull the thing, the pink up to come up to the stitch. So now we're just going to knit 2 rows in the pink, or whatever colour you are using. So it's just 1 row knit and 1 row purl in the pink. Now we are just doing a purl row. So that is a knit row and a purl row, which I've done in the pink. It'll be contrast, whichever colour you are using. So you're going to repeat those 4 rows, the 2 rows where you slip the stitch, and the 2 rows where you just do a knit row and a purl row. And you're going to do those rows until you have done 6. Done the pattern 6 times, and I will come back and show you how to do the finishing row. So we've now done the slip stitch pattern. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and we're going to do the finishing edge to it now. And for the finishing edge, so we're now going to knit 1 stitch. Now we're going to slip each stitch. That is the slip stitch there. We're going to slip the stitch on either side and knit the one in the middle. So we're going to slip that stitch, knit the next one, slip the next stitch, knit the next 2 stitches. It's 1, 2, do slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, slip the next stitch, knit 2, 1, 2. We'll show that again. Slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, slip the next stitch, and knit the next 2. That from now on we're going to slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 2 to the end of the row, and then I will be back then. We are now at the last 4 stitches, and I'm going to slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and knit the last stitch. And now the last row of the pattern is just purl all the way across this row, all in white. And I will meet you at the end of that row. So that is the last row in the white. So we have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the last edging row for to finish off the pattern. And now we're going to knit until this measures 7 inches, and then I will show you how to do the we're going to knit it in pink. till it measures 7 inches, and I will show you how to do the armhole shaping when I get that far. The back now measures 7 inches, and I'm going to cast off 3 stitches at each end, at this the start of the knit row and the start of the purl row. So that's 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to knit to the end of this row. Now at the start of the purl row, and I'm going to cast off 3 stitches, beginning of this row. 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to purl across this row. So that is those 3 stitches cast off at each side, and now I'm going to knit 2 more rows. Just 1 row knit and 1 row purl. So that is 2 more rows knit, and now we're going to do the decreasing row, and this decreasing we're going to do on this row and then every alternate row afterwards. So knit 1, slip 1, knit the next stitch, and pass that slipped stitch over the knit stitch. And then we're going to knit to the last 3 stitches. You did when you were little. Right, the last 3 stitches. I'm going to knit 2 together. Knit 1. And the next row is a purl row. Get the wool out the way. They're going to purl across this row. I will meet you at the end of that row. So that is the 2 rows for decreasing. The knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, knit to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, and then knit 1, and then purl 1 row. And repeat those 2 rows until you have 20 stitches left, and I will come and show you what to do with those stitches. I now have 20 stitches left, and I've cut the yarn off, left a long end for the sew, and I'm going to put it on a stitches onto a holder. And that is the back completely finished. So the next part will be the one of the fronts, the left front. So the back is finished, so we're now going to do the left front. So I will take that out the way. And I'm going to cast on, I'm going to use 3/20 3¼ millimeter or 3.25 needles, and I'm going to cast on 29 stitches, and I always leave a long length, see, to sew up the side. Oops, dropped that. And I'm going to cast on exactly the same way I did for the back, which is cable cast on, knitting behind the whole stitch, not into it. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. That is my 29 stitches cast on, and now I'm going to knit and twisted rib. I'm knitting into the back of the knit stitch and into the front of the purl stitch, the back of the knit stitch, oops, the purl stitch. So that's how we're going to do the rib. So that is 10 rows I have done, and I'm going to change to the 4mm needle, and I'm going to knit 2 rows, 1 row knit and 1 row purl before I start the pattern. So I'll be back when I've done that. So that is the 2 rows. So that is the 2 rows, the knit row and the purl row. And now I'm going to add in the white, the contrast, whatever colour anyone else is using. I'm using white. Pull some out. And I'm going to knit first 4 stitches. Leave a little end when you join it for this to sew it in. We're going to knit 4 in white. And move that down out the way. So that's 4 knit stitches in white, and then we're going to slip the next stitch and keep the last stitch you did in white, keep your finger on it to stop it tightening up on the back. And they're going to knit another 4, 2, 3, 4, slip that next stitch again, hold your finger on the white to stop it tightening up, 2, 3, 4, and carry on across the row like that. 4 white stitches and 1 slip 1 stitch, the pink stitch. On to the last 5 stitches, going to slip 1, knit the last 4 in white. 1, 2, 3, 4. I always knit into the back of the last knit stitch. That's just for anyone can do whatever they like, but that's what I do. It keeps that edge a little bit neater. Now the next row, is going to be 4 purl in the white, slip the next purl stitch from behind. If you stitch it from the front, it'll be twisted on the next row, so you slip it from behind. And again, keep your finger on the white before the slip stitch. That's 3, 4, slip from behind, do those 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I'll meet you at the end of that row. So that is the 2 pattern rows, and now we're going to do 2 rows in just the pink, your main colour. So we're going to do 1 row knit and 1 row purl. And I will meet you when I've done those 2 rows. So that is the 4 rows to the pattern. So you're going to repeat those 4 rows, the 2 white rows and the 2 pink rows until you have done that 6 times all together. So that's 1 time the 2 white and the 2 pink. That's once, so you have another 5 times to do that, and then I will be back then when I get that far. So now we have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now I've had to put the light on in the room because it is now almost 4 o'clock and it is dark. So you've done the 6 that you have to do, and I'm going to show you the 1 row that I finish off with. I do the last row slightly different, where you have the slip stitch here. I am going to knit that stitch. I'm going to slip that stitch before that stitch and the stitch after, and then there will be 2 stitches knitted in the white. There would have been a slip stitch there, but I do not slip stitches at the start of the row or the end of the row, so we're going to knit 3 here in the white. So it's knit 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to slip the first stitch before you get to where we slip the stitch on the other rows, and then we're going to slip, not slip, we're going to knit that stitch over where we had been slipping it before, and then we're going to slip the next stitch and knit the next 2 stitches. It's 1, 2, and then again we're going to slip the next stitch, knit that stitch that we had been slipping before, and slip the next stitch, and knit the next 2 stitches. I will see you at the end of that row. So that is that row finished, and the next row we are just going to knit all across in the white. There's no slipping, it's just knitting it all the way across the row. And I will meet you at the end of that row. So that is that last row, which was all knitted in white, and then we're going to be changing to the pink again, or to your main colour, whatever you're using, and then we're just going to knit the rest in the pink or your main colour until the left front measures 7 inches, and you'll finish on a wrong side row. And all you need to do is, with your back, is count from the row, the white row, is count how many rows you started from there up to where you started the armhole shaping. You don't need to measure it, just count up your number of rows. So that's how it's going to look. And I will be back when I get that far. The left front now measure 7 inches, and we have finished on the wrong side row. So we knitted across and finished on the wrong side row. So we're going to cast off 3 stitches on the right side. So that's 1, 2, 3, and you're going to knit to the end of that row. So that is the cast off stitches and knitted the rest of the row, and now we're going to knit another 3 rows, 1 purl, 1 knit and 1 purl, and then I will show you the decreasing. So we start off with a purl row, and after this row there'll be 2 more rows, and I will be back then. So I have now done those 3 rows, and now I'm going to do the decreasing. It's exactly the same as what I did on the back. It's knit 1, slip 1, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch, and then just knit to the end of the row. So that is a decreasing row where I knit 1, slipped 1, knit 1 and passed the slip stitch over, and I've knit to the end. Now I'm going to do a purl row. Just purl all the way across. So that is the purl row knitted, and now I'm going to increase exactly the same. Again, we're going to knit 1, slip 1, knit the next stitch and pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch, and then just knit across to the end of the row. And that is how we're going to decrease until we have 16 stitches left on the needle, and then I will come back then. So I now have 16 stitches on the needle, and I've placed it against the back, so that is what I do to test whether I have the right number of stitches here for the distance from the top of the neck. And I think that is about right. So you're finished on the right side row, and you're going to do a decreasing for the neck on the wrong side row. I've lost my needle. There it is. So I'm now going to cast off 5 stitches on the purl side. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is 5 stitches cast off, and I'm going to purl to the end of that row. And I am now going to decrease at the armhole edge. I'll slip one, knit one, pass the slip stitch over, and I'm going to knit to the last 2 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together, and at the neck edge I'm going to do another 4 decreases, so that'll be 5 decreases after the 5 stitches we've cast off. So that is 1 decrease. Going to purl 2 together. The decreases are on every row on the neck edge, so that's 2. And you're decreasing at the armhole edge at the same time. That's 3 for the neck edge. I'll purl 2 together on the next row, that would be 4 times. And this row will be 5 times, decreasing at the armhole edge at the same time. And your last decrease at the neck edge. And we're going to just purl this last row. Next row, sorry, not the last row. Now it is knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, pass that slip stitch over. There are 2 stitches left, and I'm going to purl 2 together on the last row. And I don't have any scissors up here to cut that off, so I'm leaving a long loop. And that is the left front. You mark it up to there. That's the left front finished. And when you do the right front, you do exactly the same as what you've done. Same number of stitches. The pattern's exactly the same as what I showed on this part, on the left front. And it's exactly the same up to the armholes. Instead of ending on a wrong side row, though, you end up on the right side row. So you're doing the decreasing on this side instead of that side to match this part of the cardigan. Now I have continued till it measured 7 inches, and as you can see, that is the left side, and I cast the stitches off, finished on the wrong side and cast the stitches off on the right side. But you're going to do it the opposite way on here, so you're knitting across the right side and you're going to cast off the 3 stitches on the wrong side. So you have 1 extra row on the right side when you're doing the right side of a garment. Now that's 1. 2, that's 3, and now I'm going to purl across to the end of this row. So that is the 3 stitches cast off and knitted to the end of the row, and now I'm going to knit another 2 rows. I'm going to do the knit row and then the purl row, and then I will show you the decrease. So that are those 2 rows knitted. Now I'm going to knit across this row to the last 3 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together and then knit 1. So I will show you when I get to those stitches. And I've knitted the last 3 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together and knit the last stitch. And that is how the decreasing is going. We're going to purl the next row, and then every knit row after that we're going to knit to the last 3 stitches and knit 2 together and knit 1. And you're going to do that until you have 16 stitches left, and you will finish on a wrong side row, and I will be back then. So I now have 16 stitches left, and I've finished on the wrong side, and I'm going to cast off 5 stitches at the beginning of the next row. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to knit to the last 3 stitches. Now I'm going to knit 2 together, knit 1, and I'm going to I'm going to knit 2 together at the neck edge on the next 5 rows. So I'm going to purl across this row, and I'm going to purl 2 together, but I'm not going to go through the front like that. I'm going to purl through the back of the stitches. That is so you want the stitches sloping inwards like that. And the next row I'm going to knit 2 together through the back of the loop. Again, that's so your stitches are sloping inwards. And that is how you're going to do the decrease at the neck edge until all 5 stitches have been knitted together. So I've done 2, you have another 3 more rows to do. So that is all 5 stitches at the neck edge knitted together, and the stitches at the armhole edge at the same time. So we have 3 stitches left, so we're going to knit 2 together, knit 1. The next row we are just going to purl 2 stitches together, the last 2 stitches. And I haven't any scissors up here, so I'll leave that long in there. So that is the right side to match the left side. Put them together on the pieces. And as you can see how its cardigan is starting to come together now. And now after that I have the sleeves to do, and I've already done one sleeve, because as you do two sleeves exactly the same, you don't need to do a tutorial for both sleeves. So when I come to do the other sleeve, I will show the tutorial how that one is done. So this is the sleeves I'm going to do now, and I have got 3 1/4 millimeter needles, and I'm going to cast on 33 stitches. And I always leave a long end for to sew up afterwards. And the same as all my other cast on, I do a cable cast on. The cable cast on, as I've showed you before, is you go into the back of the whole stitch, not through the stitch like that, but through behind the whole stitch. And that's how I'm going to cast on until I have 33 stitches on. It's 31, 32, 33. Got to count that up to make sure. It's 33. So now I'm going to knit in twisted rib, knit 1, purl 1, 4, and you knit into the back of the knit stitch for twisted rib, just the knit stitch on every row, every knit stitch on every row. Knit 1, purl 1, and I'm going to do this until I have knitted 10 rows, and I will be back then. So that is 10 rows I've done in the twisted rib. Now I'm going to change to 4mm needles now, and I'm going to knit the first row. I'm going to knit 2 rows with the main colour, which is the pink, what I'm doing. And on the first row, I'm going to increase 1 stitch at each end of the row. So I'm going to knit 1 and knit into the front and the back. And then knit through the last 3 stitches. So we're at the last 3 stitches. I'm going to do the same as what I did at the start. Going to knit into the front and then into the back of the stitch as well. So that's the increase on the first row. And I always knit into the back of the knit stitch on the last stitch on the knit row. And I'm going to purl 1 row now. Change my other 4mm needle. And this is just purl all the way across this row. And we're at the last 3 stitches, and we're going to slip that stitch and knit the last 2 stitches in the contrast, or white in my case. In the next row, to purl the contrast colour or the white. slip the main colour from behind, otherwise you'll have a twisted stitch on the other side when you come to do the other row. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a little bit difficult for me because I'm not actually looking at my knitting, I'm looking down my camera, and it's a bit awkward. Sometimes I miss a stitch. So slip that stitch behind, from behind, and purl the 4. And carry on across that row until you've knitted all the stitches in the correct colour. So that is the first 2 rows of the pattern, and the next 2 rows are just knit and purl. 1 row knit and 1 row purl. In the main colour, or pink in my case. So I'm just going to knit across that row and then purl across the next row. That is the knit row, and now I'm going to do the purl row. So that is the 2 rows in the main colour, and now I'm going to do the last 2 rows of the pattern. It's a shorter pattern on the sleeves than what I do on the rest. So for this row, we are going to knit over the stitch that was slipped and slip the stitch on either side of it. So that was the stitch that was slipped, so we're going to slip that stitch. So we'll be knitting that stitch, slipping that stitch, knitting that stitch, slipping that stitch, knitting 2, and then doing the slip, knit and slip. So we're doing 1 in the white, slipping the next stitch and knitting the stitch that was slipped in the previous rows. Then slip that one again, knit 2, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, and then knit 2 stitches. And that is what you're doing all the way across the row. And I will be back when I finish that row. So we are at the end of the row, so we're going to slip that 1 stitch, knit the next stitch, slip the next stitch and knit the last stitch. And then the next row, in your contrast, or the white in my case, I'm just going to purl across that whole row. Purling the stitch, the slip stitches from behind. And that is how that row goes, and I'll be back at the end of that row. So that is the finish of the contrast. Now we're now just working in the main colour, but as we increased on that row there, so we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There were 7 rows I knitted actually. So we're going to increase in the next stitch, in the next row, and then just knit to the end of the row in your main colour now. And I'm at the end, the last 3 stitches, so I'm going to knit in the front and the back of that stitch, and then knit the last 2 stitches. And we're now going to carry on knitting. We're going to increase on every 8th row until you have 43 stitches, and then carry on knitting until it measures 7.5. So keep on knitting till after you have 43 stitches until it measures 7.5 inches, the sleeve, and I will be back then and show you how to do the armhole shaping. Now I have increased to 43 stitches, and it now measures 7.5 inches, which I want for the sleeve. So I'm going to do the armhole shaping. So I'm going to cast off 3 stitches at the start of the next 2 rows. It's 1, 2, 3. I'm going to knit to the end of this row. So that's my 3 cast off that side, and I've knit to the end of the row, and now I'm going to cast off 3 stitches purlwise. One, 2, 3, and then I'm going to purl to the end of that row. So that is the 3 stitches cast off at each end, and now I'm going to knit 2 more rows, and then I will be started decreasing. So that's my 2 cast off rows and the 2 knit rows, knit row and purl row, and now I'm going to decrease. And I'm going to knit the first stitch, slip the second stitch, knit the third stitch, and pass the second stitch over the third stitch. That's slipping your stitch. Knit to the last 3 stitches. And my last 3 stitches, I'm going to knit 2 together, knit 1. That is how the decreasing is. And I'm going to knit another 3 rows and then do that again, and then another 3 rows after that and do it again. So after this decreasing on the 4th row, you'll be doing it on the 4th row for 2 more times, and then it'll be every other row, but I will show you when I get to that. So we now done the armholes and decreased 3 times on every 4th row. So you can see there, 1, 2, 3. And I'm now ready to decrease on alternate rows. So the decreasing is going to be done on every other row. But when you do these, the 3 times on the 4th row, you'll have 31 stitches. And then from decreasing on alternate rows, you'll do that until you have 7 stitches left, and put them onto a safety pin, which was what I would be doing. So that is the sleeve finished, and we have 7 stitches on a safety pin. I'm now going to do the neckband. I like to do the neckband on my cardigans and sweaters before I actually sew them up. So I'm going to pick up, I'll count them as I'm picking them up because I'm not sure how many. 1, 2, pick up there, 2, that's 3, 4, 5, 4. So I picked up 14 stitches on the right front, and I'm going to pick up 7 from the sleeves. You might have some shadows over here because I'm doing this of a night time, and I have to put the light on of a night time to cast shadows. So there's 7 from the first sleeve, that's 7 from the sleeve. I'm not sure how many is from the back. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 20. 20 stitches from the back. Nineteen, 20. Now I'm going to take another 7 from the other sleeve. And there's going to be another 14 from the left front. So 1, 2, 3, 13, 14. I'm not sure how many stitches that is altogether. So we have 62 stitches, and we're going to knit the first row. Just ordinary knit all the way across the whole row. And I'm almost at the end of that row. And that is one row. Gives you a garter edge to the neckband. Separates the neckband from the rest of the cardigan. And now we're going to knit 6 rows in knit 1, purl 1, rib, and I'm doing twisted rib the same as I've done for all the rest of the ribs. So it's knit 1, purl 1, and that will be for 6 rows, and then I will show you when I cast off. So I have now knit 6 rows, and I'm going to cast off these stitches. You're going to cast them off in rib, the way I knit the rib. So it is just knit 1, purl 1, and cast off quite loose. Do not pull the stitches tight. and just keep going across the row until all the stitches have been cast off. I'm on to the last 3 stitches to cast off. And that is how the neckband looks. Now the next thing to do will be to sew up the raglans and the side seams, and then I will show you how to put the fronts on, the front button bands and buttonhole bands. I am now stitching up the raglans, and I've stitched up 1, 2, 3 and left 1 to show how it's done. And as you can see, I like a nice flat seam. It's called flat stitching. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I'll take that pin out. You take the 2 pieces each side of the sleeve and the back I'm doing here, and you just flat stitch from one side to the other. Go through 1 stitch on each side and just pull it through. I go through the little bumps here on either side where the stitch has changed. And that is how you flat stitch, and just carry on down your seam until you finish the seam. So that is how all the seams look. Nice flat seams. They're not pulled in or gathered up or anything. They're nice and flat. So I'm going to show you how to do the sleeves now and the sides. And to do the rib part of the sleeves, you need to pin it. At first I'm going to stitch in these little bits of the white. And I'm just going to sort of slightly weave them over and just go through, loop it through once and tighten it. And that's how you weave in the contrast colour, whatever colour, it's white in my case. And just a couple of little stitches over and loop it over, and then just cut them off. So now I'm going to put a pin in the sleeve where the rib ends. Now when you sew the ribs, you flat seam exactly the same way you did for the raglans. You're flat stitching them. That's holding two pieces together like that and just going from one side to the other. Until you get down to where the rib finishes and the stocking stitch starts. Now I'll put a pin in and show you how to do the sleeve. How you're going to back stitch the sleeve, so match the white, make sure you match the different colours so that you don't get one bit higher up than the other. And to back stitch, you just go hold the two pieces together like that, and you just go through the stitches like that. And this will just keep knotting. And where you come out, you go behind that stitch where it comes out there, and come out a little way in front, and that is called back stitching. Behind, coming out in front, behind again, coming out in front. An awful lot of job with this wool, it's knotting as I'm going through. And keep checking that you're matching up the contrast colours on the where you change colours on the thing. And that is how you back stitch. It's just keep going behind the stitch and coming out a little way in front, and do that on all your seams. You flat stitch the rib part and back stitch the rest of the seam, and I will be back when I finish that. So I am back with the cardigan. I've done the band on, I've done the button band, and I'm going to show you how to put the buttonhole band on, which will be the same as this one, except it'll have buttonholes in. And I will tell you exactly how many stitches you need to pick up to make sure you get the edges of the pattern matching. So I'll blow this up so you can see better. On here. Now I'm going to pick up 10 stitches on where the rib part is, and then from the rib up to the top of the pattern here you will need 31 stitches. And pick up 1, 2, and I'm using 3.25mm needles, the same as what I used for the rib. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to miss that stitch there and go into the next one. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Going to miss the next one, go into this, miss that stitch there and go into the next one. That's the 10 stitches of the rib, and now we want another 21 stitches to get up to here to make up the 31. So I go 1, 2, 3, and these stitches are picked up in the where you see the very last stitch on the edge of the knitting. That's where I picked the stitches up from. So I picked up 3 and I'm going to miss the 4th one, go on to the 5th one. And that's 1, 2, 3, again miss the 4th stitch. So that's how you're picking the stitches up all the way up. You're picking up 3 and missing the 4th one. So I have worked out 31 stitches now from the bottom of the rib up to the top of the pattern, and now I'm going to carry on. I had to take 1 or 2 stitches away and make it knit 2 and miss a 1 in a couple of places to get to the right number of stitches there, or else it wouldn't have matched with the other side. So you're going to pick your stitches up from the bottom of the rib up to the top, and you will need 67 stitches altogether. That's counting the 31, and so that will leave another 36 to do from here up to there. And like I did with this part here, you may have to alter, maybe knit 2 and miss a 1, or knit 4 and miss a 1. It depends whether you get the right number of stitches. But that is how I'm going to do, and I will meet you when I get to the top and I have 67 stitches. So I now have 67 stitches, and it worked out correct from after the pattern, after the white pattern up to the top. I had the right number of stitches. That was knitting 3 and missing 1 all the way up, and it was the right number of stitches. I ended up with 67, which is what I wanted. And I've lost my needle there. And now the first row is going to be knit, going to knit 1 row all the way across, and now I'll meet you at the end of that row. So that is the first row, where you have like a garter edge there that separates the cardigan from the rib, like on this side. That rib there. And now we are going to do what all the other ribs been done in, is knit 1, purl 1, minus twisted rib, which is knitting into the back of the knit stitch. So we're just going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and we're going to do that for 3 rows, and then I will come back and show you the buttonhole row. So I have knit 3 rows, and I put stitch markers in where I'm going to place the buttonholes. I put 5 stitch markers in, and so I'm going to purl 1, one. And when I come to the stitch marker, I'm going to knit that stitch, bring the wool forward and knit 2 stitches together. And I keep my finger on the wool before I knit those 2 stitches together so I don't get it tight, so it doesn't pull the stitch tight. There you can see there's a bit slack on the because you don't want a tight buttonhole depending on what size buttons you're putting on. So you go to the next stitch marker, and we are at the next stitch marker. We're going to knit that stitch, bring the wool forward in front of the needle and knit the next 2 stitches together. So that is called wool forward, knit 2 together. And again I keep my finger on the yarn so it doesn't pull tight. So that's 2 buttonholes, and then you're going to do that for the rest of the stitch markers where you make the buttonholes, and I'll see you at the end of that row. So that is the buttonhole row done, and I have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttonholes. I'm going to knit 2 more rows and knit 1 purl 1 rib, and then I will be casting off the stitches. So that is all 6 rows done with the buttonholes. There's 5 buttonholes, and I'm going to cast the stitches off now. So I'm going to cast off in 1 by 1 rib the way the rib was knitted. That's 1. And cast off loosely. Do not pull the stitches tight when you're casting off. Just take them over the needle and leave them as they are. Don't pull the stitch tight after you take it off, or you'll tighten up the edge of the rib, or the edge of the band. And that is how you cast off the stitches, and I will be back when I finish that. So that is the rib done, and I have put pins in where the buttons are going to be placed. So made sure that the 2 lines of the pattern here are going to match. So I'm going to put the buttons on now, and I've left, these are long ends. That was on the end of the knitting, that what I use for to put the buttons on. Now I'm using 5 small white buttons to go with the pattern. And I'm just going to sew the end to bring it down to where the button should go, into that one there, and then move it along. And you go 3 times through the holes in the button. Sometimes it's difficult to find the right place from the other side. I had a bit of trouble getting that one through. There, so that I've been 3 times through the buttonhole, and then I'm going to just put the needle through and wrap the wool round a couple of times on the wrong side. To secure it. And then cut it off. So that is how I'm going to put the buttons on. Now we'll be back when I've done them all. So that is the finish of the little white 20-inch slip stitch, pink and white slip stitch cardigan. So that is the end of the tutorial, so I can start sorting all the pieces and adding them all together for to put the pieces up on YouTube.